I've done enough for you. Time to go. That's what my stepfather said on my 18th birthday, right before tossing me out of the house that was actually legally mine. But the part that cut even deeper came right after. I called my mom, heart pounding, hoping, no, begging, for her to have my back. Her voice on the other end? Cold. Detached. "Greg's right," she said. "It's time you grow up." They thought they were done with me. Like tossing out an old suitcase, problem solved. But what they didn't count on was how fast life was about to flip on them. 1 week later, they were the ones packing their bags. And yes, that included my mom. And when the dust settled, folks started talking. Some said I did the right thing. Others acted like I'd gone too far, kicking my own mother out of the place she called home. So here I am, telling my story. And I'm asking you, was I wrong for standing my ground? For finally taking back what was mine? Hey there. My name's Ethan. I'm a freshman in college, studying psychology up in Northern California. A lot of people get into this field because they want to help others. Me? I want to figure out why the deepest pain doesn't always come with blood. Why the worst wounds can be invisible, and still mess you up for life. I'm not usually the type to sit around reliving the past. But if there's one moment that flipped my whole life on its head, it was that birthday. It started out like any regular day. The weather was nice, I went to class, even got a few "happy birthday" texts. Nothing big. Nothing fancy. But funny how sometimes, the most ordinary days blindside you the hardest. That day didn't become unforgettable because of cake or candles. It stuck with me because it was the day I got cut off, completely, from the people I used to call family. That was the moment I got shoved into adulthood, ready or not. Not because I was 18, but because nobody saw me as their kid anymore. I remember that afternoon so clearly, like it just happened. I'd just gotten off the bus, 4 months ago. My head was full of dumb little hopes. A slice of store-bought cake, maybe. A card with some rushed handwriting. Something. Anything to show someone remembered this day mattered to me. Instead, I walk up to the house and see Greg, my stepdad, already waiting on the porch. No greeting. No smile. Not even a fake one. In his hand? My backpack. The left strap all twisted like it had just been yanked off a hook. No, hey. No, happy birthday. Nothing. He dropped the bag on the tile with a thud and said, like it was just another Tuesday, "I've done enough for you. Get out." I didn't move. Couldn't. My mouth opened to say something, but nothing came out. My arms dropped, and I realized my fists were clenched so tight my nails were digging into my palms. Finally, I managed to stammer, You can't do this. This is Mom's house." He scoffed. "It's mine too." That little smirk on his face, like I was the one being ridiculous, set something off in me. "Go ask your mom," he said, arms folded. His tone dropped like steel. "You're 18. That makes you a grown man. And grown men take care of themselves. I don't owe you a damn thing." I could feel my pulse in my ears, pounding like a drum. I reached down, grabbed my backpack strap with a shaky hand, and whispered, "Mom wouldn't go along with this. She wouldn't." That's when I heard the gum pop. Up on the second-floor balcony, leaning like she had front-row seats to a show, was Taylor, Greg's daughter from a previous marriage. She'd always had that smug, queen of the castle, vibe. "Oh, really?" she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You sure about that?" I didn't even get a chance to respond before she added, "She already said yes. Don't believe me? Call her." Her words hit harder than a slap. And deep down, I knew it was coming. I just kept hoping I was wrong. "You don't have the right to do this," I said, trying to keep it together. Taylor came down the steps, walked right up to me, and pointed at my bag like it was garbage. "If you left anything, come get it before tonight. That room's mine tomorrow." Then she tossed one last jab over her shoulder, like it was some kind of joke. "Happy birthday, Ethan." I stood there staring at my old backpack, lying there like a kicked dog. I didn't go inside. Didn't pick it up. I just stood there, hoping, maybe if I stayed still long enough, this whole thing would vanish. 10 minutes went by before I could move again. I finally reached for my phone and called my mom. My hand was shaking, but I pressed that call button like it might save me. It rang 3 times. She picked up. "I'm here. What's going on, Ethan?" I stared down at my bag while my voice cracked. Greg just kicked me out of the house. No gasp. No shock. Just silence. And then, her voice. Calm. Cold. I know. Everything in me clenched. "You knew? And you didn't stop him? How could you let him do that?" I still had this stupid hope that if she just heard the words out loud, she'd snap out of it. But no. She let out a tired sigh. Her voice dropped, low and emotionless. "Ethan, you're 18. It's time to be independent. Greg's doing what's best." I could barely swallow. Independent? Is that what you're calling it now, getting thrown out like garbage? She didn't answer. Silence again. Then, like she was just done with the conversation, "Greg's right. You need to grow up." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I stood there in that moment, not frozen from shock, but from the weight of betrayal. I had actually believed she'd protect me. I tried once more. Just once. My voice barely a whisper. "You do know it's my birthday, right?" A breath. Sharp. Followed by a robotic, flat, "Happy birthday." Click. She hung up. And I stared at that screen like it held the last shred of the person I used to be. And right then, something hit me in the gut, hard and plain. She'd made her decision. And it sure as hell wasn't the right one. It wasn't love. It wasn't family. She picked the man she slept beside over the boy she once promised never to leave behind. Over her own son. And just like that, I was alone. Just me. My beat-up old backpack sitting in the dirt. And the last fragile pieces of whatever belief I had left about what a family was supposed to mean. I stayed on that porch a while after the call ended, phone still in my hand, like maybe the screen would light up and this would all be some sick misunderstanding. But it didn't. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called Uncle Frank. He's my dad's younger brother. We never saw each other much, maybe holidays, the odd visit here and there. But every single time, he looked at me like I mattered. Like I wasn't a problem. 30 minutes later, his car rolled up to the curb, headlights cutting through the dusk. He barely even parked. Just rolled down the window, gave me a nod, and said, "Hop in." I did. Then, before pulling off, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. Right there in the front seat, he called my mom. Put her on speaker. I just sat there next to him, listening. "Deborah," he said, his voice sharp. "I'm with Ethan. He told me Greg kicked him out. Care to explain what the hell's going on?" Her voice came through cold as ice. "This is our business, Frank. Stay out of it." Uncle Frank let out a short, bitter chuckle. "Yeah? Well, consider this your missed chance to make things right. Mark my words, Deborah, you'll be the one packing bags in under a week." And man, for the first time that day, I felt like I could breathe again. Not because she was wrong. But because someone finally, said it out loud. He turned to me, looked me straight in the eye. No lecture. No questions. Just that steady tone he always used when he meant every word. "Let's go, kid," he said. "You've got a place at my house. Always have." By around 7 that night, I was sitting in his warm little dining room. The lights were soft, the whole place smelled like chicken curry, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt okay. Aunt Diane came out of the kitchen with that same calm smile I remembered from when I was younger. She handed me a glass of water, firm grip, soft touch. "You've lost weight, Ethan," she said, glancing at Frank. "Nobody feeding this boy, right?" I gave a half smile. Didn't say a thing. I didn't have to. A few minutes later, their daughters, Maya and Sophie, came bounding down the stairs in pajamas, each hugging a stuffed animal half their size. "Is Ethan staying, Mom?" one of them asked. "He can sleep in our room if he wants. He's a special guest tonight," Aunt Diane said with a wink. I laughed a little under my breath, a real one this time. Told them I was fine sleeping on the couch. But Aunt Diane just waved it off. Nobody in this house is just a guest. That night, I had dinner with a family. Not a perfect one, but one that felt safe. Whole. Uncle Frank sat across from me, eating slow, quiet, thoughtful. Then he set his chopsticks down and looked me dead in the eye. "Ethan," he said, there's something you need to know about the house. The one you just got kicked out of. About what your granddad left behind. I stopped mid-bite, spoon frozen halfway to my mouth. What do you mean? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just stared at me, his eyes heavier than they'd been all night. Not yet, he said. Finish eating first. But tonight, I need you to really listen. And I did. Later, after the dishes were done and everyone else had cleared out, Uncle Frank brought me a mug of hot coffee. The smell filled the whole room, mixing with the scent of wood and warmth. I curled up in the armchair near the window, still in my jacket. I didn't quite feel like I belonged. Not yet. He sat across from me, coffee in hand, his face serious now. The clock on the wall ticked softly in the silence. Then, slowly, he asked, "Ever wonder why that house was already there when you were a little kid?" I shrugged. I figured it was Mom's. Or maybe something Dad left behind. Frank shook his head, setting his mug on the glass table. "No," he said quietly. "That house was your grandfather's. And before he passed, he made sure it went to you." I blinked. My stomach sank. "He left a will," Frank continued. "Made it crystal clear, Ethan Wallace inherits the house. You were only 8 when he passed, so legally, your parents were given temporary guardianship over it. It was all filed properly. Notarized. No one argued." He paused. I saw something dark move behind his eyes. "But then, 2 years later, your dad died. That stroke came out of nowhere. He never got a chance to change a thing. And after that, your mom was the only adult left with access to the documents." I sat frozen in that chair, feeling each word land like bricks stacking on my chest. "Greg showed up not long after," Frank said, voice low. "And from then on, nobody talked about the house. Nobody mentioned your name being on anything. They just acted like it was theirs. And me? I grew up under that roof never knowing I was the one who actually owned it. I didn't say a word. Couldn't. My hands just clenched the armrests, knuckles white, veins bulging like they were screaming what I couldn't. I took a slow breath. The coffee's warmth had vanished. All I could taste now was something bitter. And it wasn't the coffee. It was truth. The kind of truth that burns going down. Then Uncle Frank reached into the drawer of the coffee table and pulled out a folder. Thin. Worn. Pages yellowed by time. "This," he said, "is a copy of your grandfather's will. I kept it. Just in case." I took it from him. My fingers were cold, like my body hadn't caught up to what I was hearing. My eyes found the first page. The bold line across the top. Ethan Wallace. And that's when I knew. From this point on, nothing was ever going to be the same again. Right after Uncle Frank handed me that folder, the lights flickered, and then, suddenly, everything went dark. For a second, I just sat there frozen, thinking maybe the power had gone out. I glanced around, confused. The room was completely still. Then, from the kitchen, this soft flicker started to glow. Just a tiny flame at first. Gentle. Warm. Candlelight. And then came a voice, soft but steady, cutting through the quiet like it belonged there. "Happy birthday to you." I froze. Mouth slightly open. Didn't even breathe for a second. Because what I was looking at didn't feel real. There they were, Uncle Frank, Aunt Diane, and their daughters, Maya and Sophie, all standing around the dining table. Each of them holding a candle, smiling like they'd been waiting just for this moment. Not big smiles. Not dramatic. Just real. Warm. Genuine. And in that moment, I felt something crack open in my chest. Aunt Diane was the one who said it. "Happy birthday, Ethan." Her voice was full of that same comfort I'd felt when she greeted me at the door. Like a soft blanket on a cold day. Like home. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there, completely still. Somewhere between wanting to cry and wanting to laugh. But I didn't do either. I just let the moment happen. That cold emptiness I'd been carrying since the porch. It slipped away, like it didn't belong here anymore. Maya looked up at me with her big, bright eyes and said, "We wanted to surprise you." She was beaming, like this was the most important thing she'd done all week. Sophie, who was just a little older, reached out and gently touched my shoulder. "Now you don't have to spend your birthday alone," she said. And I swear, those words almost undid me. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. My eyes blurred just enough that I had to blink a few times. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like an outsider. I didn't feel like someone people just tolerated. I felt accepted. Seen. Not because I had something to offer, or because they owed me. Just because I was me. And that was enough for them. The next morning, around 9, after we'd had a quiet breakfast, Uncle Frank poured me another cup of coffee. He slid it across the table and said in that calm way of his, "It's time you met someone who can help." I raised an eyebrow, but he didn't explain. Just nodded toward the door, his eyes steady, serious. I knew then, whatever was coming, it mattered. We got in the car and drove to the city. Not the busy part with traffic and shops, but a quieter street lined with older buildings, those sturdy brick places with ivy crawling up the sides and decades of stories inside. He led me into one of them, down a long hallway that smelled like wood polish and time, until we stopped in front of a door that read, "Mr. Chandler, Attorney at Law." Uncle Frank knocked. We were invited in right away. Behind a polished wooden desk sat a man who looked like he'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by much anymore. Middle-aged, slightly graying at the temples, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The kind of guy who probably doesn't miss a single detail. "You must be Ethan," he said as we walked in. His voice was calm, confident, the kind that makes you sit up a little straighter. Frank nodded toward the chair across from him. "Go ahead. Tell him everything." So I did. I told him everything, from Greg kicking me out, to my mom siding with him, to what Uncle Frank revealed the night before. I laid it all out. Mr. Chandler didn't interrupt. He just listened, jotting down notes here and there in this small, tidy notebook. His face never gave anything away, but I could tell he was processing everything. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "Ethan," he said, voice calm but firm, "based on the will and what Frank's told me, that house legally belongs to you." Those words. I can't describe what they felt like. A slow, warm wave of relief rushed through me. Like I'd been holding my breath for days and finally exhaled. "So I can ask them to leave?" I asked, voice barely steady, needing to hear it again. "Yes," he said with complete certainty. "You are the legal owner. If they refuse, we'll escalate through the proper channels, police, court orders. But I recommend starting with an official notice." Even as he spoke, I felt some of the pressure inside me finally letting go. But I was still nervous. I didn't know how my mom or Greg would react. "What should I do next?" I asked. Mr. Chandler looked me right in the eye. "I'll go with you to the house. As your attorney, I'll make sure your rights are protected if there's any resistance." I let out a long breath. The kind that carries more than just air. It carried a year's worth of fear, guilt, doubt. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I don't want to face them alone." He nodded, grabbed his leather briefcase, and stood. "That's what I'm here for. Let's go get your home back." And just like that, I wasn't walking into that mess alone. I had someone in my corner now. Someone who knew the law, and how to make it speak louder than Greg ever could. About an hour later, we were standing in front of the house. My house. The one I'd grown up in. The one I'd been thrown out of just the day before. I stood at the gate for a second, just staring. The place looked the same, but everything about it felt different. Like it was wearing a mask I could finally see through. Uncle Frank turned to me. "You ready?" I nodded and clutched the folder tighter. This wasn't just about walls and a roof anymore. This was about reclaiming my place. My name. We walked up to the front door. Frank knocked, steady and strong. A moment passed. Then I heard footsteps inside. The door opened. There they were. Greg and my mom. Standing side by side like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't been kicked to the curb like yesterday's trash. My mom's face twisted slightly, surprise, maybe. Or guilt. Hard to tell. "Ethan," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't warm either. Just uncertain. I looked her straight in the eye. "I came home." Then I looked past her to Greg. No need to explain. No small talk. This was my house. They knew it. And deep down, I think they'd always known it. Uncle Frank stood tall beside me. Like a damn mountain. And then Mr. Chandler stepped forward, pulling out the document like a sword. "I'm Ethan's attorney," he said clearly. "This house was left to him by his grandfather. The will is legally binding. Ethan has every right to take possession of this home." Silence. My mom's eyes bounced between Frank, me, and that document. Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. "But, this is our home," she finally whispered. Like maybe if she said it soft enough, it wouldn't sound like a lie. I didn't blink. "Not anymore," I said. "This is my home now. You and Greg don't belong here anymore." That's what Mr. Chandler said next, and he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His tone was ice-cold, steady as a judge handing down a sentence. No room for negotiation. "According to the will," he continued, "and based on Ethan's legal ownership, you have no right to remain on this property. I'm asking you to leave. Now." The words landed like a punch in the room. My mom and Greg turned to each other, that same stunned, angry look flashing across their faces. My mother's eyes snapped back to mine, sharp, accusing, like she was about to spit fire. Her voice cracked, thick with fury. "Ethan, have you completely lost your mind? This is my home. You can't just throw your own mother out." I didn't flinch. I just looked her straight in the eye. And in that moment, something in me hardened. I wasn't that scared, hopeful kid anymore. That part of me was long gone. "This is my home," I said, my voice flat and firm, like steel that had been through fire. "And you? You and Greg don't have any right to be here. So don't start talking about raising me or taking care of me. I've had enough of that script." Then, just like a switch had flipped, Greg stormed toward me, face red, fists clenched, whole body tensed like a coiled spring ready to snap. He pointed right in my face, hand trembling. "You don't get to throw us out, Ethan. Who the hell do you think you are?" He stepped forward again. It looked like he was going to lunge. But I didn't move. I didn't back away. I didn't even blink. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of him. Not anymore. I had roots now. I had truth. And the second he came close enough to matter, Uncle Frank stepped between us like a wall. Calm. Steady. Protective. Back. Off. His voice was sharp as broken glass. "You so much as breathe on him the wrong way, and I'll have you charged. You understand me?" Greg froze. Chest heaving. He looked stunned that someone had actually stopped him. Uncle Frank didn't back down. Didn't blink. Just stood there, staring him down like he'd been waiting years for this moment. Then my mom turned to me. Her face was tight, pinched with something between sadness and disbelief. Her voice shook when she spoke. "You're really gonna throw me out? After everything I've done for you?" I looked at her. No anger. No hate. Just a clean break. The final line in the sand. "I've made my decision," I said, quietly but clearly. The air in the room grew heavy. You could feel the tension pressing in from every side. My mom's face twisted. Greg's fists stayed clenched. Both of them staring at me like they didn't recognize the person standing in front of them. But I wasn't the same. I wasn't going to apologize. I wasn't going to shrink back or explain myself. They could scream. They could glare. I wasn't bending. A moment later, they slammed the front door in our faces. But right before it shut, my mother flung one last line out into the air. "Call the cops if you want. Greg and I aren't leaving." The door slammed with a loud thud. But I didn't move. Because I knew exactly what needed to happen next. I took a breath, deep and steady, and made the call. 15 minutes later, 2 state police officers pulled up. Mr. Chandler was already 10 steps ahead. He laid out everything: will, legal paperwork, copies of the title. All of it clean, clear, notarized. There was no room for doubt. The officers listened, asked questions, reviewed the documents. Then they knocked on the door. After a short conversation inside, they came back and told us, "You're right. This house legally belongs to Ethan. There's no rental agreement. His mother was only his guardian until he turned 18. Now he's a legal adult. He's fully within his rights to ask them to leave." But then one of the officers turned to me, voice calm. "Look, Ethan, I get where you're coming from. But maybe, just maybe, consider giving them a few days to find another place to stay. And that's when something sharp and angry flared in me. Not because I didn't have empathy, but because I was sick of being the one expected to compromise. To keep the peace. To swallow the damage while everyone else got to stay comfortable. What about yesterday? I asked, voice low, cold. Because I have proof they didn't give me a few days. I pulled out my phone and opened the front porch camera footage. Hit play. There it was. Clear as day. Greg ripping my backpack from the hook and tossing it outside. Timestamp, 3 p.m. The day before. Mr. Chandler leaned in. Something shifted in his expression. He reached into his briefcase, flipped through some of my documents, and his eyes landed on something. Ethan was born at 5 p.m., he said, loud and clear. Which means, at 3 p.m. yesterday, he was still legally a minor. Silence. The air changed. The cops glanced at each other. My mother's face went pale. Even Greg blinked hard, like someone had sucker punched him. One officer turned to me, nodding slowly. That changes everything, he said. If they kicked you out before you were legally of age, that's a whole other matter. That's illegal. Mr. Chandler quietly pulled me and Uncle Frank aside. His voice dropped, serious but calm. Ethan, you've got every right to press charges. We can file for full compensation. You've got the law on your side. And for a moment, I wanted to. I really did. I wanted to go all in and show them they couldn't treat me like trash and walk away clean. But then, I hesitated. As much as I was hurt, as much as I resented everything, part of me still saw my mother. And I didn't know if I had it in me to crush her completely. I let out a long breath and made my call. I want them out. Today. But I'm not pressing charges, not right now. Then I added, their stuff will be packed and left outside in 3 days. They can come get it. But I don't want them near this place again. Uncle Frank looked at me for a long second. Then gave a slow, understanding nod. Like he knew exactly what that cost me. Inside, I still felt a knot. But at least now, I was the one holding the rope. When we stepped back inside, Mr. Chandler addressed them again. Calm. Clear. No room for misunderstanding. We're not filing charges. Not at this time. But you are required to vacate immediately. He paused, just for a second. If you refuse, we'll move forward with a formal lawsuit. And I promise, it won't go easy. And that's when my mom spoke again. Her voice was barely holding together. Ethan, she said, soft, desperate. Please. Let us stay. We were wrong. I know that now. I'm begging you. Something in me tensed again. Because a piece of me still wanted to care. Part of me wanted to give her a break. Just one small inch of mercy. I mean, she was my mom. But then I remembered the day before, how she just stood there while Greg tossed me out like I was nothing. Not a word. Not a hand raised to stop him. She didn't choose me then. She picked him. And now she wanted kindness? I looked her right in the eye and said, steady as stone, you said nothing when he threw me out. You let him. You chose to stay quiet. Well, now I'm choosing to protect myself. She didn't fight back. Didn't plead. Her eyes just dropped to the floor, clouded with something I couldn't quite name, shame, maybe. Regret, even. But she stayed quiet. And that silence told me everything. There was no coming back from this. Something inside me started to settle, like a weight was lifting off my chest. A strange calm came over me. Not joy, not anger. Just peace. Maybe even relief. And then the front door opened, and chaos walked in. Taylor. Greg's daughter. And the moment she figured out what was going on, she exploded. Who do you think you are, Ethan? Kicking my dad out of this house? She shrieked. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Furious. Loud. Rattling the walls. You cold, heartless jerk, she hissed. You're throwing out the man who took care of you. Over a stupid house? Do you have any clue what he's done for you? The rage in her eyes lit up the whole room. And yet. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at her, silently holding my ground. Everything in me wanted to snap, to shout, to put her in her place, but I didn't. I kept still. Calm. That's when Mr. Chandler stepped forward. His voice didn't rise. but it cut through the tension like a knife. "Taylor," he said, firm and low. "That's enough." He pointed to the security camera mounted on the wall. His gaze locked onto hers, cold and unmoving. "You should remember, everything you say and do here is being recorded. I strongly advise you to stop. Right now." She froze. You could see the fire still burning in her, but the warning hit. She swallowed hard, jaw clenched. "You'll regret this, Ethan," she spat through her teeth. But Mr. Chandler didn't so much as blink. He stepped in a little closer. "Leave. Now. Or I'll have law enforcement remove you immediately." There was a moment where none of us breathed. Then, she backed down. Because she knew they'd lost. The cops stepped in again, this time with finality in their tone. "You've been ordered to leave. Immediately." And one by one, they gathered their things in silence. My mother, Greg, Taylor. No yelling now. Just bitter, quiet defeat. As they headed toward the door, one of the officers turned back, voice heavy with warning. "If any of you come back here without permission, or try anything against Ethan, it'll be dealt with. And next time, there won't be any warnings." He made sure those words landed. His eyes locked onto Greg. Then my mom. And just like that, they walked. No fight. No words. No last-minute guilt trips. They walked out. And me? I stood there, still as a rock. Part of me couldn't believe it had actually happened. The other part? The part that had carried all that weight for so long, it finally let go. It felt like I'd just stepped out of a cage I hadn't even known I was locked in. A few minutes passed. Then my mom turned back one last time, her voice quiet, trembling. "Ethan, please. Just give me 1 hour. Let me pack what I need. I'll leave after that. I promise." I didn't say anything right away. My heart was heavy. Really heavy. A small part of me still wanted to let her keep some dignity. But the rest of me? I was just exhausted. Tired of apologies that came too late. Of silence that always cost me more than it cost her. I looked her in the eye and said, "Fine. 1 hour. That's it. But I'll be here the whole time. You'll pack under my supervision. Uncle Frank and Mr. Chandler will be with me." She nodded slowly. Said nothing else. Her face was still full of sorrow and resignation. No more pushback. No more pretending. Uncle Frank stood beside me, arms crossed, his eyes hard and steady. Mr. Chandler gave her a short nod, just enough to make it clear we were all watching. And so, they packed. My mom. Greg. They moved through the house slowly. Quietly. Like strangers sneaking through a place they didn't belong anymore. I didn't watch them too closely, but from the way they rushed, the way they didn't meet our eyes, I knew they felt it. They knew it was over. The price of pride. The cost of choosing power over love. It had finally come due. Frank and Mr. Chandler didn't take their eyes off them once. Every item was accounted for. Every drawer checked. Nothing would accidentally disappear. No little surprises later. When the hour was up, I turned to her, voice calm, measured. "That's enough. Whatever you didn't get, I'll leave outside the gate in 3 days. You can come pick it up then." She didn't speak. Didn't beg. She just dropped her gaze, and walked out the front door. Greg and Taylor followed her, both silent. No drama. No goodbye. Just the sound of the door closing behind them. And me? I stood in the middle of the living room. The same one I'd grown up in. Still breathing. Still standing. But now, for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I had taken my home back. 4 months have passed since that day. The legal mess is over. The title's officially in my name. It wasn't easy. But it was worth it. And now, I have peace. I have space. I have a home that actually feels like mine. They never came back. Not once. No calls. No messages. No apologies. And honestly, I haven't missed them. At first, the silence felt strange. Like something was missing. But over time, I realized, that silence? That's what peace sounds like. No shouting. No walking on eggshells. No pretending. Just, quiet. And freedom. And I didn't get here out of hate. Or revenge. I got here because I finally understood. You don't have to stay in toxic relationships, just because they're called family.